Have you ever really thought about how much control we might be willingly giving up just for convenience?
Or maybe pause to think about what our privacy actually looks like down the road, with all these digital systems taking over.
Yeah, and how do these big ideas about like global governance fit into that picture?
Well, these aren't just abstract thoughts, are they? For this deep dive, we're looking at source material that gives a really provocative take on all that global governance tech control.
Our main source today is an interview about a film. It's called The Agenda, Their Vision, Your Future, and the interview was on the GB News YouTube channel. It makes some pretty bold claims, unsettling ones, actually.
Definitely. So our mission here is to unpack what the film's actually arguing. We'll look at the history it presents, the tools it says are being used or could be used for control, and, the implications for freedom, for privacy.
And we're sticking just to what the discussion in our source material says, pulling out the core ideas, the key details, so you can get a clear picture of what the film and its creators are putting forward.
Okay, so where does this discussion say the plan begins? It points to the UN's Agenda 2030. Now, that's usually presented as this global plan to, save the world.
Right, the Sustainable Development Goals and all that. But what does this film argue it really is?
It's a pretty stark contrast. The film claims Agenda 2030 is actually a master plan to control the world and every aspect of life on Earth. That's a direct quote, essentially.
Wow. Okay. And how does the UN fit into that, according to the film?
The film depicts the UN as being heavily influenced by very wealthy people, calls them oligarchs, and says the UN is basically being used like a tool or vehicle to push forward this old ambition for global control.
And there was that specific phrase mentioned from an American investigative journalist in the film, Alex Newman. Something about unis.
Yeah, you have to understand unis to understand what it's really all about. It really suggests there's something hidden, doesn't it?
So what is unis referring to there?
He's actually talking about UNESCO, the UN Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. The film implies that looking at its history, especially in shaping, global education and narratives, is crucial to seeing the alleged hidden agenda.
And it's interesting how the source describes these positive-sounding, benign-sounding bodies, like the UN, the World Health Organization.
Right. Saying they're being co-opted.
Exactly. Co-opted. The idea being that because they sound good, people trust them, which makes it harder to see any underlying plan if there is one.
Makes sense. If you trust the messenger, you don't question the message as much.
So this master plan, what are its historical roots, according to the film? It's not new, apparently.
No, the film argues it's a recurrence of a long-lost dream, something called technocracy, going back to the 1930s.
Technocracy. Okay, what's the core idea there?
Basically, the belief that, the world's too complex, too important for democracy, that decisions should be made by the very wealthy who then appoint scientists and experts to manage everything.
So experts rule, not the people.
Pretty much. Expertise over the popular vote. That's the gist of it, as presented in the film.
And the film connects this to a specific event, something in the late 60s.
Yes. The formation of the Club of Rome, described as a Rockefeller-backed initiative.
And its core premise.
According to the source, it was founded on this idea of too many people and too few resources.
The population angle.
Exactly. And the film draws a direct line from that through the 1992 Earth Summit and Agenda 21, right up to Agenda 2030. It maintains that this underlying theme, population control, has been consistent throughout.
Now, this is where it gets really specific. The source talks about a man named Morris Strong.
Right. Key figure, apparently. Instrumental in setting up the IPCC, the International Panel on Climate Change.
And involved with the UN, Rockefeller, Club of Rome, quite the connections. So what's the film's take on his IPCC involvement?
Well, the film presents the IPCC not so much as a purely scientific body, but as a political group.
A political group? How so?
It claims the IPCC focused research funding almost entirely on CO2 as the driver of climate change, and that Strong was also key in launching carbon markets.
So the film suggests maybe it's more about business or changing the money system.
That's the question it raises, yes. Is the primary driver genuine environmental concern, or is it, as the film asserts, more about business interests and fundamentally altering the economic system, using climate as the justification? It's a very pointed claim.
Okay, let's shift to the how. What tools does the film claim are being used or will be used to implement this control?
It focuses on a specific set: digital ID, surveillance, AI, and digital currencies. These are framed as the pillars of this control grid.
enabling a kind of oversight we'd never seen before.
Precisely.
The surveillance aspect sounds particularly intense in the film's telling, dictating how we think.
Yeah, the source describes that chapter as very worrying. It talks about facial recognition potentially capturing data on toddlers, even in playgroups,
Toddlers, wow.
and that this data could track them for their entire lives. The claim is stark. Nothing will be private. Everything ends up on a computer in the AI records. Total transparency, but, not for the individual's benefit.
And our current money, fiat currency, the film predicts its collapse.
Yes, and it suggests what replaces it are new digital currencies. But these aren't just digital versions of dollars or pounds.
No. How are they different?
The film argues they'll be based on tokens or based on the natural world, natural assets, and the use of carbon.
Carbon. So tying money to your carbon footprint.
That's the connection the film makes. It argues that the whole narrative of a climate crisis caused by carbon dioxide is, from its perspective, a manufactured justification, a tool of control to push net zero and bring in these new carbon-linked digital currencies.
Okay, but how do they get people on board with all this digital stuff? It can't just be forced on everyone immediately, can it?
No, and the film addresses that. The source says things like convenience, safety, and fun are the lure. Exactly. Easy-to-use apps, paying with your phone, online entertainment. It draws people into the digital world. The film uses a pretty strong analogy.
Well, yes.
It's like a drug dealer. You get the easy, enjoyable stuff first, the harmless stuff, and then later, the nasty stuff comes in.
That leads to this idea of the digital cage or the inverted prison. That sounds ominous. What does it mean?
It's a powerful image. The film suggests a future where you might seem free, you can walk around, but you can't access essential things, your money, food, fuel. Unless you comply. Absolutely 100% in 24 hours of every day with every diktat imposed by people you likely didn't elect.
Wow.
Yeah. Catherine Austin Fitts, one of the experts cited, puts it bluntly, they will rule by rules. So you misbehave, you can't buy something, or maybe you've already used your carbon allocation for the month.
So freedom on the surface, but complete control underneath.
That's the picture the film paints, yes.
Yeah.
Freedom without real autonomy.
Given how huge this alleged plan sounds, you'd expect it to be all over the news, debated constantly. But the film argues that's not happening.
Quite the opposite. It claims the public is mostly not aware of Agenda 2030 and that it's certainly not examined in the press.
Really? Why not, according to the film?
It suggests that the role journalists used to play, questioning authority, digging deep, that seems to have gone in the mainstream media, leading to less public demand for information for the truth.
And what about that term conspiracy theorist? How does the film say that label is used?
The source argues it's used deliberately to close down debate, just dismiss the ideas without engaging.
But it also mentions social media.
Yes. It suggests that despite the dismissals, social media is allowing more people to actually discuss these topics now. So things that might have been easily swept under the rug before are getting more airtime, for better or worse.
The film also brings up education, a deliberate dumbing down.
That's the claim, that critical thinking is not welcomed, and that textbooks, especially around climate change, are conditioning students rather than encouraging questioning.
Why would they want that, according to this view?
The film's perspective is that, particularly with AI coming, too many thinking people are going to cause a problem. A less questioning population is easier to manage in the system they describe.
It's a very dark outlook. There's that quote from Catherine Austin Fitts about the psychopathy of the vision.
Yes. The general public cannot fathom the psychopathy of the vision that they're facing. It suggests the scale and nature of the alleged agenda are hard for ordinary people to even comprehend.
And Dr. David Hughes relates this lust for control back to fear.
That's a really interesting point from the film. Hughes's view, as presented, is that this drive for control isn't just about power, it's rooted in fear. Fear that the billions can control the few if they're aware and get organized.
So the control is a defense mechanism for the few against the many.
That's the implication drawn from Hughes's comments in the source, yeah. An intriguing psychological angle.
Okay, so after painting this really alarming picture, does the film actually offer any solutions? Or is it just a warning?
The source material indicates the film itself doesn't really lay out a roadmap for resistance. Its main goal is presented as awareness to make people realize what the danger is and just how far it's gone.
So it's about sparking thought, not prescribing action.
Primarily, yes, more informational, aiming to get people thinking critically about these trends.
But the discussion did mention some potential personal actions, like with technology.
Right. Small things, maybe, like consciously choosing to stop using technology sometimes. The example given was using cash instead of digital payments.
Boy, cash.
The reasoning presented is it takes away one aspect of control, because if you use cash, they don't know what you're spending your money on, reducing your digital trail.
Makes sense. And what about non-compliance? Just not playing the game.
Yeah, that idea comes up, civil disobedience or just not joining in. The source mentions the potential power of even a stubborn minority of people not taking a digital ID, for instance.
Like a critical mass opting out could disrupt the system.
That's the speculation. It references the idea that sometimes the only winning move is not to play. If enough people refuse to participate in certain systems, maybe those systems can't be fully implemented. It's presented as a thought-provoking possibility.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. To synthesize what we've explored from the source material about the film, The Agenda, Their Vision, Your Future, its core argument is that this global push towards digital systems, framed under Agenda 2030, isn't really about sustainability or progress in the way we think.
Right. It contends it's actually about fulfilling a long-standing ambition for technocratic control, a system run by unelected experts and wealthy elites, driven, perhaps paradoxically, by their own fear of the masses.
And this agenda, the film claims, is masked by appealing ideas like convenience, safety, and tackling crises like climate change, while the real tools are things like digital IDs, pervasive surveillance, and new forms of digital money tied to behavior.
Exactly. It paints this picture of a future where freedom could become superficial, constrained by digital rules and constant monitoring and inverted prison. It really challenges you to reconsider the narrative around technological advancement and global initiatives.
Which leads us to a final thought for you, the listener. Given the claims presented in this deep dive, claims drawn directly from the discussion about this film, what aspects of convenience in your own life might be worth maybe just reevaluating?
Thinking about their potential long-term implications for your own privacy, your autonomy, it's certainly food for thought.
Absolutely. And remember, understanding different perspectives, even ones that are challenging or unsettling like those in the film we discussed, is really vital to being truly well-informed in the world today.